Hey everybody, welcome back to Only Stupid Answers. My name is DJ Wooldridge, and with me as always is the amazing Roxy Striar.
Thanks for making me laugh all the time, DJ.
I try. Or I don't. I'm just a goon. We are here today talking about WandaVision, episode 3. You're like, wait, you're wearing the same clothes as you did episode 1 and 2. Stop noticing those things. Stop talking about it. We're talking about episodes. It's a totally different day. It's a totally different time.
It's tough times. I don't like to change anymore.
Same. I think that I wear my comfy pants a lot more often.
All the time.
All the time.
Why take it off?
Why? There's no reason to, I don't think. So we're here to talk about WandaVision episode 3. As we're talking about episode 1 and 2, we really enjoyed it. And we continue to jump through the decades. As last episode ended, Wanda was pregnant inexplicably. This episode, and it became color. I think we forgot to mention it became color at the end. We are now in full Technicolor. The new intro is very like Brady Bunch, very like of that era. But again, even though they're homaging those sitcoms, this is way better shot than any of those sitcoms could have ever hoped to have been in a million years. Like that opening sequence, like there's scenes with him like walking up to a building that's like beautiful. Anyway, and we start with the doctor there, and Wanda's pregnancy, I think, is like 4 months on. Like it's going very quick, and Vision's starting to suspect things. Vision's starting to be like, wait a second. What were your thoughts on this episode?
I have to say that this was the episode that made me like solidify that I fell in love with the show, because now that we are in color, I think that symbolizes a lot of different things. But, you know, we're opening our eyes to new things. We're seeing different things. We're realizing that Wanda and Vision are not necessarily in this together.
Yeah.
Because up to this point, you kind of feel like they know the same amount of things. They're open with each other about everything they know. They're both a little confused about certain things. But this is the episode that makes me realize this is actually not WandaVision. This is Wanda.
Yes.
And Vision.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really interesting to watch. I also like how much the side characters come into play here. This was a really interesting episode for a lot of different specific scenes and moments, but the scene by the fence, it's very confusing.
With the guy that's trimming the hedges and then it goes into the brick. Is that the scene you're talking about?
I'm talking about the Catherine Hahn neighbor scene where Bettany walks out and they are trying to see who's inside the house and how that's working.
Yeah.
That was a really interesting scene. Obviously, the scene inside with the actual pregnancy and where it is that what is her stage name? Geraldine.
It was Geraldine. It was. I think it changes each episode. I think the first episode was Geraldine, and I think it was. I don't remember what it was in this one. But
whatever it is.
Monica Rambeau. Yeah.
Yeah, but where she goes and what that means and all of that. I mean, there was just so many things taking place that there was always enough to grab onto, but always further questions. And I feel like whereas before I thought Wanda wasn't in on any of this, I'm starting to think that she knows more than she's letting on. And really we're more in the dark like Vision, and Wanda's more in the light. So that was kind of fascinating. And I also feel like this was the episode in which I don't know who to trust anymore, which was an interesting place to put us. I thought this was visually the most exciting episode, maybe because of the color, but also just I like that. I like the aesthetics of this. I love that long hair, 70s kind of look. So that was exciting for me. And I like the quirkiness and kookiness of, you know, things are spinning on the walls, and that felt very sitcom-y. But what if sitcoms were Marvel? Yeah. And that's exactly what this is. So that really worked. Or like getting the doctor there as fast as we can.
Yeah.
All of that stuff for me was so fun.
I think they really hit on something smart here, because if you talk about the relationship, for me, is somebody that a bulk of that relationship in the comics, the Scarlet Witch Vision relationship, happened before I even existed. So looking back on it, it's always very weird, like a mutant witch and an android in a relationship. It's like, what were you guys doing? Like, what were you guys on, right? And but taking that and using that is a sitcom setup. That, you know, it legitimately is. And so running with that, I think, is a smart setup for the show. And I think it allows them an easy way into some of the stuff. But I think you're right. This was the moment for me that, like, we don't know how much Wanda knows, but she's definitely more in control than we initially assumed. And it also excites me because the feeling I had in earlier episodes, I just felt like I was more drawn to Vision. I thought he got the funnier bits. I thought, because Wanda was more functioning in the wife role of these old sitcoms, which was not always the, give or take, like I Love Lucy was not like the lead. Mm-hmm. This let me know that, like, at least for me, yeah, you might be more drawn to Vision. This is Wanda's. This is going to be about Wanda. You know what I mean? And what's going on with her, and that excites me. When you talk about the visual stuff, I don't know about you. I feel silly for saying this. That stork blew my mind. I'm like, that stork looks incredible.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Why do you feel silly for that?
Just because it feels like a weird thing to like hone in on. Like, it's one thing you're watching The Mandalorian, and you're like, oh, the giant worm snake thing is great. It's like that stork. There was a moment where I was like, is that a real stork?
It looked like a mother effing real stork.
Yeah, it was like,
and obviously it couldn't have been, but at the same time, I was like, wow, that is they got a stork,
and it's doing tricks, and it just every time the whole sequence with the stork is. I guess also because a lot of times when they do CG animals, there's a little willing suspension of disbelief. It never really looks good. This time was like, it looked great. And they've used their budget so far in this show incredibly well. Because I know, obviously, the budget on the show is insane for a TV show. But I want to say Kevin Feige said that basically the budget for any one of these shows is the same for the movie. So even though that sounds like a lot, it is a lot more content you're creating for that same buck. So seeing the way WandaVision has utilized that budget has been really, it's just been cool. The other major thing that happens in this episode is Wanda does give birth to her twins. And in the comics, she does have twins in the comics. It's Roxy, when I tell you it's complicated, it is mind-meltingly complicated in the comics. They're pieces of demons, and then they go away, and then they end up in other kids, and those kids find out. It's insane. So it's a lot simpler here. They have twins. It is Billy and Tommy, which are the names of their sons in the comics. The codenames are Wiccan and Speed in the comics. We'll go into that more later. And then, as you were mentioning, Wanda starts realizing that Monica may not be a part of this reality that I assume that has been constructed possibly by her, and she flicks Monica essentially out of that reality. And this is give or take a few like TV screens or voices from the outside. This is the first time that we really see outside of what's happening.
Yes, I loved the moment where we're talking about Wanda's brother.
Yes,
that felt very MCU-y. And I know that there's been a lot of talk about Quicksilver and like characters who would play and how to appear and what that would look like and whatever. But this is what I'm talking about in this episode being more of an MCU filled episode, because that reference and Monica having some awareness of that, and then Wanda being all too clear that Monica knows more about her than she thought that Monica knew about her. Yeah. All of that totally worked for me. And then when we go to this like other site that she is found, that Monica's lying down, and then like the helicopter light and all of that stuff, I really don't know what's happening.
Yeah.
And that's exciting.
Yeah.
Because often I am like, okay, so here's what's going on here. Mm-hmm. But combining this with the radio who's doing this to you, and Wanda not telling Vision when Vision walks in what happened. Yeah. Keeping this as a secret, with all of those things combined, clearly there's more here than meets the eye. And also with the bees, with the sword, like why are there bees, and since when was Sword a bunch of beekeepers, or what is happening there? Just a lot of questions. And I don't know, is this 8 episodes?
I believe it's 9, which
9
feels
episodes?
About right, because this definitely feels like the end of the first act.
Yes, yeah. Exactly. It gives us enough time to answer some of those questions, and I'm doing a lot of theorizing. Yeah. Like, what is happening here? And that scene at the fence that I was talking about earlier, I was so this is why I don't know if you're accurate, if you're right that Wanda is doing all of this. You could be, and that could be what's going on. But as Vision is talking to Catherine Hahn's character and the other guy,
The other neighbor, yeah.
the other neighbor, and they want to tell him something, but then they can't, and then they decide not to. Are you thinking that those are figments of Wanda's imagination, or she has put them there, and that they don't want to betray Wanda by telling him? Or what are you thinking that scene would mean then if this is all Wanda's doing? Do you get what I'm asking?
Yeah, I do. And I think that's actually a really good point because I'm always a little suspicious when fans start theorizing about which mystery character is who. But having looked up more about Agatha Harkness, I feel really confident Catherine Hahn is Agatha Harkness. So she would not be, and so she would serve something in this. But she is having a legitimate conversation with the neighbor, which implies that he's not a figment of anybody's imagination.
Right.
And so there's also, because of the chanting of for the children in the previous episode, maybe there's some group that wants Wanda to have kids. Like the kids matter.
So they can take the kids or do something with the kids. And that's where I was going with this, DJ, because when Agnes says, do you know who's inside with her right now?
Yeah.
It seems like Agnes is almost trying to protect her from Monica taking her children,
or maybe
or
they
from
want
protecting her children, and Agnes is worried that Monica is going to reveal to Wanda
what's happening.
They're trying to take your kids. Something with the kids here. There was something there that made me think that there's somebody else.
The other thing I like about that, in our previous review, you mentioned that the idea of getting beyond the idea of her just being crazy and not being able to handle things. If it's somebody else, we distance ourselves further from that because Scarlet Witch in the comics has been mentally unstable. She's famous for No More Mutants and a bunch of Avengers Disassembled and all that stuff. And so if it is people are putting her in this place, then it's not just, oh, Wanda's crazy. You know what I mean? It's which is probably better to like maybe not do that with this character, especially as we get closer to characters like Moon Knight and stuff like that. It's obviously tricky to deal with mental instability in these mediums. So I'll be interested to see. But I do think with her removing Monica, she is more active in this than I think even Wanda realizes. I'm not sure Wanda completely knows how much control she has over this, which might be how she gets out of it. She comes to terms with the fact that like, oh, actually I have control over this whole thing.
Well, that's the way that we can deal with instead of her just being crazy, the more self-actualized and the more self-aware she is, then the less she's just crazy.
Yeah.
Because once she takes control, then that will be an interesting thing. But I still think that this really has something, the scene with the children, the fact that the juxtaposition of Vision being outside with the neighbors and them trying to warn him of something, and her being inside with Monica and Monica kind of trying to warn her of something too, or at least tip her off to the fact that she knows her and knows more about her. There's something more to that with the kids than it all revolving around the birth.
I think you're right. The other thing I wanted to touch on that you brought up is the mentioning of Pietro, her brother, Quicksilver. The cool thing about that is, yes, it is also a big Marvel Easter egg. It's a character we haven't heard referenced in a while, but it is the closest we've ever gotten to letting Wanda be sad about the fact that her brother's dead. Totally. Because Wanda's never been given, even though she's my favorite character and I rep her so hard. Yeah. I've had to do a lot of filling in the blanks, and a lot of projecting, like, I can relate to this, and this is how she's probably feeling. Yeah. But that does not mean we've gotten to see all of that. Yeah. Luckily, Elizabeth Olsen is a fantastic actress, so she conveys that in her facial expressions, but we don't ever get to spend time with her about what she's experiencing, what she's lost, and what she's learned. So her addressing this and us actually spending time here, I was like, this is so cool that we get to do this in this format. And that's why I love television so much, because there was no way in hell that this was going to be in the movies. Yeah. And I think I agree with you. I think I've always talked about how I think characters like this, because they come from serialized mediums, kind of benefit more from serialized stories. And so it is cool that we finally get an opportunity to, like, what does make Wanda tick? How does she feel about these things? If the rumors are true and we get to see one or two or however many versions of Quicksilver, get her to process that. And that's something that the MCU has always been really good about too, is revisiting things that might not have worked and improving of them. Like, oh, you don't really like Thor 2? Well, Frigga's actually going to play a pretty significant part in Endgame, and by that one scene, kind of retroactively make Thor: Dark World better. You know what I mean? So like, Avengers: Age of Ultron is not the most beloved in the franchise, and I don't know if this version of Quicksilver is not the most beloved, but this is an opportunity for them to like that. Those things may be true, but it still means something to Wanda. It still matters to Wanda, so therefore it still matters, and it's something important.
And then there's also all that conversation about, is this actually going to be Evan Peters?
So I wanted to ask you about that. I remember there being rumors that he's going to be on the show. Where are we at with those rumors? Do you know?
The last that we had heard, some of the, when this happens, it's not Lego, but some of the concept art for a doll or a game or an action figure, like something, looked like Evan Peters.
Yeah.
So that's the last that we heard. I don't know what that will mean. That would be a bizarre choice. I'm not mad at it, but they're gonna have some splaining to do.
Yeah. I would like to see that because I am on record for not being a huge Quicksilver fan, except for the Evan Peters version of the character.
Yeah.
And I'm including comics, any of them. I'm just like, whenever Quicksilver shows up, I'm meh. But Evan Peters was really great. I do want to see if they're able to get Aaron Taylor Johnson come back and see something with that, because this is a unique opportunity to really like dive into that. And as it appears that this is really going to be about Wanda unpacking her shit with Vision, with Pietro, with all that stuff, it'd be good to see some closure to that. And I'll be interested to see if we see more grown-up versions of the kids by the time the show is done, if they're aging up in a similar quick fashion to how she was pregnant. For those that don't know,
Interesting.
For those that don't know, her kids are Billy Kaplan, a.k.a. Wiccan, who has abilities similar to his mom, reality-altering abilities. He first appeared in Young Avengers #1 in 2005. He was created by Alan Heinberg and Jim Chung. And then his brother, Tommy Shepard, a.k.a. Speed, has powers similar to her brother, has speed powers. And he first appeared in Young Avengers #10 in 2010 and was created by Alan Heinberg and Jim Chung as well. And obviously we've talked about, they've been building to like Young Avengers, and this was another one of those times of like, oh yeah, Young Avengers is happening.
Yeah. I mean, I think that we might be talking years and years down the line. Mm-hmm. But yes.
So now that the last thing is there was another ad for Hydra Soak, which doesn't have ticking or bomb related imagery in this one. However, this part stuck out to me. The tagline is "Find the goddess within," which, when you're dealing with mystery shows, everything feels like a clue. That felt like a clue. Like it could either be homaging the fact that Wanda's abilities are essentially god level abilities, or perhaps there is a goddess involved in this. Maybe from Thor, maybe from something else.
That's interesting. I legitimately never would have thought of that.
So now that we're caught up with what we've seen so far, where do you think we go from here, Roxy?
Well, I wonder how long it takes us to get out of the classic sitcom. Like, do you think that when we're on episode 9, are we still in this visual medium? Or do you think that in the next couple of episodes we ditch the sitcom aesthetic?
I think at some point we do, because at some point we're going to run out of decades. I think if we go the way we've been going, we'll do 80s, 90s, maybe the aughts. But at that point, once you get the aughts, I don't know if like the 2000s and the 2010s like have distinct sitcom tropes. Maybe I'm not as educated on TV. Like when you talk about,
we would have to see a lot of Vision's butt, and there would start being swearing.
Yeah.
And a skip ahead button. So those would be the things. But yeah, I think that we're going to probably have to ditch that soon. And once we do, it will probably be at a place in which we are aware of the outside world and what's happening more there.
Yeah.
So that's where I think we're going. I think we have to, we've got the storyline with the children now. We are still continuing to see who's involved and who's not, based on who's getting injured and who's not, and how they're reacting afterwards.
Yeah.
And also, I'll be interested to see what happens with Vision by the end of this season. What what state is Vision in by the end of the season, because we can't just full blown bring him back all's fair in love and war style, but also now that he's here, I think that probably we'll get do you think we're going to get a second season of WandaVision? I guess that was just an assumption I was making.
I don't know. I honestly do not know. It feels so up in the air with these shows because you kind of can't do the same thing again. You just can't.
Right.
And so I kind of want to say no, but I don't know what that means for the future.
So if that's the case, then by the end of the season, we're really going to need to know what's up with Vision.
Yeah. And I kind of wouldn't be surprised if it ends up like Wonder Woman 1984 style, like we lose him again. But I think the difference there is I think there would be more emotional meat on them bones. This time, because I'm now more. If I'm being candid, I have not really cared about their relationship in the movies, and now this show is getting me to care. So if we do lose him again, it'll mean more to me this time than it did in Infinity War.
Yeah. That makes sense.
So we'll see. Let us know in the comments what you all think, where you think we're going. The other thing we'll need to figure out is it's weird to me that Sword is involved, because in the comics, Sword is always space, alien related. So it's are we going to be dealing with Skrull? This doesn't feel alien to me.
I know. And so why is Sword interested in Wanda at all?
Yeah.
And also, what does Sword have to do with the bees?
Yeah, and also, and is it? I know there was a shot in the trailer of her looking at Vision's Mind Stone, which is alien in origin, so maybe that's why. The other thing that I've thought of is maybe Sword is just in the MCU. Sword is just the new Shield, and it's not necessarily alien specific. It's just Shield 2.0, which feels like a weak decision to me. But
I feel like then they would have made something else up, because why then take Sword?
Yeah, because there are other in Marvel. There's Hammer. There's other Shield adjacent things that you could do. A lot of is up in the air. I am very engaged with the show is doing. I'm genuinely excited to see where it goes, because for the first time I kind of don't know. Like I literally have no clue what happens next.
What's happening?
Which is almost unheard of in the MCU for me. So let us know in the comments what you guys think, where things are going, what you think of the show so far. You can follow me at DJ Talks Trash. Roxy, where can they find you?
Everywhere at Roxy Striar, and every single day live at the Roxy, 1 p.m. Pacific.
And you can follow the show at Only Stupid Answers everywhere that matters. But on Twitter,
yank out the vowels from stupid. I wasn't ready for it.
We got there.
Oh my God.
We got there. Tune in every Friday at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers, where we do this
happens
show.
When I'm too busy clicking my pen.
Don't click your pen, Roxy. We've talked about this.
I know. Playing with this rubber thing for like an hour. I'm such an ADD child. Like, I found some rubber thing and I've been putting it on the pen, just going back and forth on the pen for like 2.5 hours.
There you go. So tune in at patreon.com/onlystupidanswers, where we talk about this and more. And we appreciate you all, and we'll see you all next week. Bye-bye.